Thrive Guys, episode 13, Pillars and Values. Feels a bit weird, doesn't it? We are recording on a Thursday, not a Saturday. But it is basically like it's almost like your Sunday. And for me, days have lost all meaning.
Oh yeah, you've been off quite a while now. In work terms, quite a while.
Yeah, I mean, this is day number 4 of a significantly long break because I've leveraged the Easter holidays in the UK to basically be off from Monday to the following Tuesday, which is glorious. Very much needed. I didn't realise quite how much I needed it until I actually was in it.
Likewise. Yeah, I've booked off the Wednesday to next Tuesday as well, so
nice.
I'm excited for it. I was hoping the weather was going to be lovely, but it's very bleak out there today.
It is. And we've just let the listener have a quick peek behind the curtain to realise actually we record these quite a long way in advance.
Correct.
So we're episode 13 and it's Easter. And this coming Sunday, we're going to be releasing episode 5. So there we go. One of the things about being productive is getting it done in advance. Having a due date rather than a due date. There we go. So what's been going on in your week?
I am an uncle again. I've had that reward. The award was being presented to me. I filed all the papers and now I'm an uncle again. So it was tough, but I've made it. Yeah. No, my brother had a child.
Congratulations to them.
Thank you. Yeah, I've got a niece now. I've had a nephew for around a year. So 2-time award winner. One of each. Yeah. What about yourself?
Well, not quite as significant, but I do have a new member of the family. I'm pleased to announce the birthing of the Logitech MX Master 3 mouse, which arrived in the post yesterday because my MX Master 2 decided that it was going to kill itself.
I thought this was the big reveal. I was so hyped, but I don't see it in the show notes. So
it is the big reveal. It's the big reveal about my mouse.
Well,
it's a lovely mouse. It's got a lovely click wheel, and it has a horizontal click wheel and front and back buttons and all of that good stuff. So yeah, there we go.
On your advice, I ordered mine yesterday. I figured
fantastic.
I'm just going to give it a go. I've done some audio work and it pays for it, so I just thought, do you know what? I've been looking for something to buy to scratch that itch. It's payday. Let me do it.
Yeah,
I'm going to give it a shot because you've been banging on about it since your new one's arrived. So
I mean, I've had the MX Master 2 for a long time, for a good couple of years, and it's the best mouse on the market, hands down. I believe it's the best mouse rather for the money. They're not cheap, but the amount of configurability that these things have and the kind of ergonomic feel in the hand, it just means that for me it's a perfect choice. And I've been sort of pining after the 3 because it's it's got USB-C now, and the click wheel is this magnetic technology that just feels better. Apparently, well, it does. The proof is in the pudding. I now have it, and it's a lot better. But I could never justify actually purchasing a new one because I'd not long bought the MX Master 2, and so it's like, can I, in good conscience, spend another £100 on another mouse when I can't really justify it in terms of the one that I've got works fine. And so when the one that I've got started not working fine, I took it as a perfect opportunity to upgrade somewhat. So,
after you kicked it out the window and said, "Oh, not working anymore."
Oh no,
it's about time to get a new one.
Oh, it just seems to have exploded into 100 pieces. Oh. Yeah, I looked online and it said that it could do that. And here I am. It didn't take me long. Actually, to be fair, I did look up the fix for the particular problem that I have. And the only resolutions I could find were take it apart and put it back together again. Literally. I found this video where basically, the bit that is at the bottom, like the little laser bit. I don't know whether it's actually lasers still. I don't know whether the technology's moved on, but I remember from being at school that it was some sort of infrared light. It's probably different now, right?
When I was at school, it was still one of those little balls in the
mice.
Ball.
Yeah, I remember those. I used to nick them out of IT all the time.
Exactly. Pop that out, clean it, pop it back in, fixed. That'll last you another year.
Exactly, and they don't make them like they used to.
Oh, it's about time you said that.
I know. With this particular mouse, you basically have to take it apart and then loosen one of the custom buttons, and then put it back together again, and then apparently it then starts working. But in order to do that, I needed to buy some of the Torx screwdrivers, which I used to have when I worked at the Apple premium reseller I worked at years ago, but I don't have them anymore. So it's like, do I really want to buy a new set of those, or do I just want to use this as an excuse to treat myself? So that's what I did.
Treat
the latter.
yourself.
Treat yourself. Shall we do Win of the Week?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Win of the Week is our segment where we get to share something that's happened this week that we would like to celebrate, just to make sure that we start our conversation on a positive note. We post a reminder on our platforms every Friday, so if you'd like to share your Win of the Week with us, tag us on your posts on Twitter or Instagram with our handle @ThriveGuysPod or hashtag Win of the Week. So Dan, what's your Win of the Week this week?
I had actually quite a few audio wins this week, a couple of projects that are closed off and a couple of songs that I'm really happy with, but I feel like mentioning those kind of makes me sound a bit like a broken record. Yeah, it pained me to write that. But no, my actual win is those Apple shortcuts you mentioned to me. It's just,
cool.
It saved me a couple of minutes. Every day I've got like a Thrive Guys shortcut on my iPhone now, and I've got one for my audio side, so whenever I want to go between them, I could just literally load it up instead of going into Notion, then using the dashboard and going through and finding where I need to go. It's literally just a one click. So when I was writing the show notes for this last night, I just opened up my iPad, just clicked on the Thrive Guys logo, there we go. There we are. Apple shortcuts is really powerful, and that's my win. What about yourself?
Well, I mean, just before I jump to mine, I'm glad that you've got some value out of that. Just for the benefit of everybody, we'll put a link to the show notes of our home screens as to provide context. Essentially, what we're talking about here is Notion is very good with links because it's essentially a website. It's essentially like a web wrapper in a kind of in an app. And there's pluses and minuses to that. That one of the positives is every page has a unique URL, and what that essentially allows you to do is in Siri shortcuts you can basically have an icon on your home screen, like a custom link essentially, and when you tap that icon, it runs the URL. But by running that URL, the phone is kind of clever enough to go, right, well, that's a Notion URL. Let me jump you into Notion. And essentially what it allows you to do is on your home screen, have links to different parts of your Notion workspace, within a click or within a couple of clicks. So I've got a number of them for my action items. So looking at today, tomorrow, and also looking at my weekly review, my daily review, etc. But the one that I showed Dan was the link to the Thrive Guys page, which is where we run all of our show notes and all of our we run our website from there, etc., etc., etc. So actually, another feather in the cap for our good friend Notion. So there we go.
Feather in the cap. Oh, I love that. Feather in
the cap. Feather in the fedora for the Notion.
Yes.
The Notion neckbeard. There we go. Anyway, so my win of the week this week is really simple. I took a week off this week, and the way that I rationalized it to myself is I said, okay, what I'm going to do this week is I'm going to get on top of the kind of the backlog of editing, and that's why I need to take a week off. Really, emotionally and kind of intrinsically, I just needed a week off. I just needed a bit of a break. I mean, it's been a significant amount of time since my last holiday, months, probably nearly a year actually, since any meaningful time off, apart from the occasional kind of long weekend here and there. And so, I'm very cognizant of burnout, and actually it's been quite difficult to stay motivated over the last kind of couple of weeks. And so I took the opportunity, given that at the end of last week, I'd wrapped up all my loose ends for March. All of the projects that I was looking to execute on were over the line, and I basically had a situation where I had a week free, and I even kept this week free just in case I had the opportunity to take some holiday. And so I booked it in. Manager was like, yeah, you deserve it, crack on. But importantly, what my win is that I've done nothing this week.
Good.
And it's been glorious. I've done no meaningful kind of, work necessarily. So, I'll give you a bit of a rundown of what I've done this week. I've watched and finished The Witcher on Netflix. Brilliant show. Yeah, wholeheartedly recommend it. Especially if you're into the games or the books, really good. I wrote some new automation pieces into Keyboard Maestro and as a kind of extension of that into my Stream Deck. And so we will at one point talk about context switching, but I basically wrote some different contexts into these buttons in Stream Deck that effectively switched me into different tasks. So, I used to have one that was just podcast, and I refined that so it actually kind of does exactly what I want it to do rather than get me kind of 80% of the way there. And I've got one now for contracts, for writing a proposal, for updating projects, and for prepping for my kind of sales forecasting meetings and things like that. So That's really, really useful. I cleaned the decking in the back garden, which was a saga in and of itself. I think it's probably the best way to put it.
It's not as therapeutic as you think when you see those videos online with people with the maybe £800 pressure washers that just go on and smash grime and rust and dirt off anything, and you use your £100
£50 one.
Oh yeah, £50 pressure washer, and it takes ages. Yeah,
and it's just wet. I mean, it sounds obvious, right, to say that it's just wet, but it's just wet. It's an insane amount of water for a diminishing return in terms of cleanliness. But I did it. I had a problem and I worked it out and I fixed it. And nothing like a bit of relaxing manual labour to really recharge the batteries, right?
Well, that's what holidays usually reserved for, especially in my household.
Well, exactly.
We never just have time off to sit on the sofa because the whole attitude is, well, you might as well work, might as well get paid for this time, and earn some extra dollar. So yeah, I done quite a lot of labour yesterday. I fixed my fence. Kerry actually done the pressure washing because she likes that sort of stuff. But I'd fixed the fence. I'd sorted out the trellis because we're approaching the time where, at the time of recording this, lockdown should be eased, so we should be able to actually have some guests in the garden at some point.
Yeah, we can now have 6 people in outdoor spaces, which is a welcome return to some sense of normality, isn't it?
It's good because I only know 6 people, so
I only like 6 people, and one of them's me. So, shall we jump into the meat and potatoes of today?
Yes, let's do it.
Fantastic. So today we're going to be talking about pillars and values. And I think a good place to start is to explain what the hell they are. So we've had a couple of conversations about actions, about goals, and lots of measurable things. So the tangible, I want to do X by Y in order to get Z, right? And I think by and large, we are very similar to other people who spend lots of time focusing on actions and goals with the mindset that they will ultimately achieve what they set out to achieve in their life, right? And so, this is where a lot of people focus their time and effort. But I suppose taking a step back from that, how do you decide what that is? How do you decide what it is that you're trying to set out to achieve, right? How do you decide the really important stuff? Like, what kind of person do you want to be? And believe it or not, that is something that you can decide, right? What are the things that make you you, or the things that you wish made you you? These are things that are within our control, by and large. So, that's going to be what we talk about today. And we have 2 systems. You call yours pillars, I call mine values. And we use those systems to help us out with those very big questions.
Yeah, life decisions.
Yeah, I thought that would make a good topic for us to talk about. So, I mean, I'm happy to jump right in. I'd like you to start off with pillars, just to kind of talk about what those are to you and what the purpose of those are. And then I'll kind of, run you through my value system, and then we'll see where we get to. Does that sound good?
Yeah, it sounds awesome. I kind of wish we could meet in the middle and have the same definition for them. instead of going between the pillars versus values. But we are where we are. Whatever works for you, and likewise. So I'm keen to hear how they differ. But I'm going to sum up my pillars, and these are essentially core values that I wanted to align with to define myself as a person, or quote, pillars that maintain my existence, not just necessarily my life, right? So I've opted for the term pillars, as originally when I started this, which is recent, I originally called it my pillars of purpose for full clarity. That's what I wanted it to be. And the purpose of these pillars, I've got 3 main points on these. So the pillars are supposed to help define my reactions to different things. So for example, if one of my pillars was to be, I mean, this is a negative example, but if, for example, one of my pillars was to be hostile in every situation, that pillar would guide me to respond in an aggressive manner every time someone spoke to me. So I use this as kind of like a jovial reaction to a serious thing, because pillars can be anything you want to define. Not everybody's setting out to be the best version of themselves. Some people have pillars that are like, I want to be a hard worker, which means sacrificing anything else to make sure you're working hard. So the way I use my pillars is mainly to maintain my personal and social relations, as it's very easy to use I think you quoted it from a book before, your chimp brain, and act impulsively. Like, for example, if someone barged into you in the street, it's presumably easy for someone to react as if this were a personal attack, or you could kind of look inwardly on yourself and reflect and actively define how you want to react about it in advance. Like, do you want to just kind of impulsively turn around and say, what are you doing? Like, watch where you're going? Or do you want to be the kind of person that says, oh, sorry, and just diffuse that situation? So for me, my pillars are kind of just a framework of how I want to better myself, and it coincides with many of like my themes for the year, like in terms of I want to continue doing audio work, but that doesn't define me as a person. But I obviously have core values that I want to project out to clients. Like, I don't want to be chasing people for money. I don't want to be pushing my ideologies onto people that come in through the door. I want them to feel comfortable, or people that I want to work with. So like my pillars are centered around like how I present myself to other people. So do I want to be one of those producers that's really easygoing and really flexible, or do I want to be one of those producers that, you come to me for a sound and I will deliver and that's it, I don't want to communicate with you. And, I ultimately decided at the start of that venture that I wanted to be approachable and friendly, and that kind of ties into my pillars, which I'll go into in a bit more detail later on. So what are your values? How would you define them? Are they kind of similar, or?
They are very similar, actually. So it sounds like we are going to meet somewhere in the middle on this, which is great.
I'm glad.
In my mind, there are two types of quality or value, right? Ones that are intrinsically who you are and part of the fabric of your character, and things that you just have it innate in you. Like, some people could be extroverted versus other people who could be introverted. I think that you are that kind of person, and that's okay, and that's something that you just need to get comfortable with, and they're part of your kind of core self, right? Those are the sorts of values or qualities that don't really change, and ultimately are like cast in iron. They are just intrinsically part of who you are. The other side is values of your ideal self. And what I mean by your ideal self is kind of your picture of ultimately who you want to be. And that might be exactly who you are right now, or there may be things that aren't quite where you want them to be for whatever reason. The objective of my system is to help me outline and understand what kind of person I want to be. And that might be, a good friend, a good boyfriend, a good colleague, for example, right? It's important for me to evaluate the gaps between the current and the ideal state of those kind of, values, right? From those values, because everything in my world is interlinked and interconnected, I try to align those values to tangible goals. So the kind of the outcome-based goals that I set myself to make sure that those gaps, are kind of being closed, I suppose. And so there's kind of 2 points. There's kind of 2 points there. So I can use this to make sure I'm setting myself the right goals. If I'm setting myself arbitrary goals that don't have kind of values associated to them, Am I really focusing my efforts in the right place? Conversely, if I have values that I set myself that I don't have a goal against, am I actually working on the path to being the ideal Joe, in inverted commas? So from my point of view, that's my value system. It's not things that you can measure. It's
exactly.
not things that you can say I've completed it or not. These are kind of principles that you want to live by to be the ideal version of me, essentially. The principles that I live by, rather. This might not be for everybody, but this is how I want to refine and evaluate my kind of my being, right?
It's kind of difficult to talk about when you kind of phrase it like that, because you are right. You kind of just go through life and you've I guess in my sense of kind of these pillars, I've always been the way I've been. I don't think I've went through like a tangible change. I am myself, like how you say, sometimes you're extroverted, some people can be introverted. I've always just been the way I am. And that's what I kind of mentioned in one of the earlier episodes. I kind of decided at some point, I don't want to just exist. I kind of want to define who I am and how I present myself and how, I guide myself based on certain principles without having to rely on someone else, because you can always define for yourself what's best for you. There's a load of like self-help books out there where people can put a framework in place for you, but building something for yourself is the best way to get, results for yourself as well. I mean, I've got an example here, which is a very simplistic example. And just because we're on holiday, so I didn't really want to use a work example, but I'm going to. But you're at work today and your boss asks you to work overtime at short notice after shift. Right?
Right.
So your response, with no basis of how your pillars operate or your values, it's quite a binary decision. Yes, of course, or no, I can't, or no, thank you, or no, governor, So let's look at that same scenario with the introduction of a value system or a pillar definition of your intended character, because it's important to note that all of this is kind of based on your intent. In the sense that if you take time to look at the logistics, well, if I take time to look at the logistics for myself, can I actually do the overtime? Is the answer yes or no? The answer is yes. I kind of define that. But then I want to move on to the characteristics of whether my framework allows this for me, which is if my pillar, for example, was, to be a better colleague or to be a harder worker, then my answer would lean more towards yes, because that's who I want to be as a person. Whereas if my pillar was to be more of, a family man, and I had dinner with Kerry or whoever your partner is in the evening, my answer based on that framework should be no, because I'm kind of standing true to who I want to be as a person, which is that I want to be a better family man. So that's why it's important to have kind of these frameworks in place so you can define who you want to be, because, if it is your goal to kind of continue building up your career, then doing the overtime might be the right thing for you. But if you haven't defined it for yourself, how are you ever going to make that decision? And every time you get asked to do something, you're kind of having to search for meaning in what you're doing, I guess.
It's an interesting one, because I think you can be both. I believe that I can be both. I can be both a career man and a family man. It's a difficult balance. And I think that's what, when I try and put my values together, I try and find balance between them, because, your ideal version of yourself is I can do everything. I can be the best family man. I can be the best career man. I can be the best XYZ, whatever, right? From my point of view, my system tries to find balance between them, because there may be different things that I'm working on each month, each week that are goal based, but because they roll up to my values, I'm always making sure that I'm working on the right goal. Based on the value that I want to try and improve. So
that's the thing. Like, this is a very specific example about, if like none of my pillars are to be like a harder worker, because that's kind of like a,
it's completely against everything that you're about, isn't it, Dan?
No. But when it comes to my pillars, you'll see what I mean in terms of how they can relate. It was just, I'm trying to find like a sensible balance, because, people's pillars aren't always going to be like, make sure you do your homework, or make sure you work hard, or make sure you get up every day at 6 o'clock, because they're more like, goals as opposed to pillars.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. It's like in that example, it's a bit extreme. But when we come on to the pillars, you'll see how I kind of use those to make and shape my decisions, because they are flexible. But you have to kind of just make sure that they align with who you want to be as a person. But yeah.
Totally agree. And I think that actually the values and pillars kind of, between the two of us are very similar. I kind of thought about an example as well, just to kind of help crystallize what I'm talking about, because an example is always helpful for that, right?
Yeah.
But actually, it's by and large pretty similar to what you're talking about. It's a framework to allow you to have focus on things to work on. Maybe that's yours sounds like a decision framework where for me that's my yearly theme. That's what I use to kind of frame my decisions. Is this going to line up with my year of prestige, for example?
Yeah.
I try and use values more about, okay, are my goals aligning to the trajectory that I want to embark on? And actually my values line up with my theme as well. It's all interconnected. It's like we're all part of a system, and the system is Notion. One thing that I have, I'm not going to share all of my values because they're personal, but one of my values is be a great friend. And so as part of my evaluation, I might recognize that maybe there are certain friends that I don't give enough time to because of the busyness of work and other commitments and, all of the things that life gets in the way. You have people that you used to be really close to and you lose touch for whatever reason. And, before you know it, those friends are not really friends anymore, right? Mm-hmm. And so sometimes that's good. Sometimes that's a good thing because they're not, conducive to delivering value into your life. But other times, actually, you want to try and maintain those relationships. So one of your values might be, be a great friend. And one of the components of that value is, make sure you keep in touch with people and make sure that you kind of, maintain those lines of communication. Now, one of the goals around that is, set by way of setting yourself a measurable goal of, how I'm going to move that needle into being a better friend, trying to find that kind of measurable thing between, where you are at the moment, maybe a distant, slightly non-sociable friend, to your kind of ideal version of yourself, an engaged, conscientious friend who is closer to that person than they are at that particular time. So, the desire and value is to be a great friend, but without doing that evaluation process of, okay, what makes a good friend? What measurable, actionable things do I need to do? Reaching out to that person and engaging, etc. I think I'd probably struggle to find an actionable outcome to try and move that needle. So it's like, I know that I want to be a better friend, but how do I do it? There's got to be a process to kind of arrive at that. Some of it is just intrinsic and innate, right? And I get that, but sometimes sitting down and understanding, okay, what do I actually need to do to become better at this is really useful. So I think that for me is crucial, and being a great friend is part of who I want to be, and so I always make sure that if it's a value, I'm always evaluating it and reevaluating it, and setting goals for myself in terms of, well, how do I move the needle? How do I keep myself on that trajectory, etc.
You can always ask yourself as well, right? Based on this example, if somebody texts you and you haven't spoken to them for a while, it's nice to reflect and say, am I being a good friend? Because it's part of your, your pillar system or your value system. You can always return back to that. So even if it's someone you haven't spoken to for ages and they just drop you a message out of the blue, part of you might think, oh, are they after something? Are they promoting something? Are they, are they selling something? It might just be that they genuinely want to reach out. So again, in that kind of framework, the thing you've got to ask yourself is, am I being a good friend? You might decide, I don't want to respond now. And it's like, at that point, you can ask yourself, am I being a good friend? And the answer is probably no. Like, would you do that to your, if somebody else messaged you, you're just going to keep doing that? And, how can you improve on that if you're not asking yourself constantly, really? Which is why it's nice to have it as a pillar. It's, something that upkeeps you. And,
I think equally, like, if I didn't spend the time sitting down and saying, right, this is the kind of person that I want to be.
Yeah.
And putting goals together off the back of that. So, if I just set myself loads of arbitrary goals in terms of, okay, I think this is what, I want to do this, or I want to do that, or I want to get this job, or I want to get that promotion, or whatever it might be, maybe based on social pressures and all of that kind of stuff, in terms of, oh, well, people say I should do this, so I'm just going to do it because that's what other people say I should do. Every time you achieve a goal like that, where you've not sat down and gone, right, this is my kind of core principle, and these are the goals that I want to set myself in order to align with that core principle, right? When you complete that goal, it's just going to have fleeting meaning. It's going to be like, okay, great, hit a dopamine that I've done that thing, right? But it's not really getting me anywhere. I'm living someone else's life. I'm living the life that someone else has just said I should live, right?
Yeah, just existing.
Yeah, and so this is actually a reasonably new thing for me, within the last 12 months, And so actually sitting down and deciding to myself, okay, this is the kind of person that I want to be, and these are the goals that I'm going to set myself in order to get me there, means that when I complete those goals, it's like, that is an intrinsic feeling of fulfillment, right? That's what I'm searching for, I think. As I've been getting older, I've been searching for that feeling of feeling fulfilled.
No, 100%. As I was explaining before we kind of actually hit the record, I was up this morning, I couldn't sleep, not because of anything in particular, and I just took it as an opportunity to write in my journal in terms of why I was awake or what I was thinking at that point, and trying to get value from the fact that I was up. And normally I'd just be like, I need to get back to sleep, and I'd grumble, put my head under the pillow, and maybe go get a glass of water, come back up and try and go back to sleep. I was like, well, I'm here now. Let's use this time and try and find meaning in it, and try and at least use this time to jot down why I'm feeling this way, or why I'm awake, and what I'm thinking about at this time, because I was wide awake. It wasn't like I just kind of stirred and thought, better get up.
So how do yours work in practice? How have you decided what your pillars are going to be? What process did you go through, and where have you arrived in terms of, okay, this is where I'm at?
So we've attacked this kind of differently, right? Because you're not sharing your actual pillars. I'm just going to go ahead and spill the beans and I'll talk you through these. So I just essentially looked at myself and looked at other people that I kind of admire and look up to. And, sometimes, I think we discussed this in an earlier episode, but sometimes you meet someone and you just think that's the person I want to be. I like sharing knowledge. I like sharing stories. I like being reliable. I like being, I went for a phase where I just would not turn up to anything. Maybe when I was about 18 to 22, I'd make plans and just think at the last minute, I just can't be bothered, like whatever. And that was it. That, to me, that was all it was. I'd just text and say, no, I can't make it, or call someone up, say, no, not today, mate, sorry. And I eventually just started getting known for that. And I was like, well, I want to be reliable. It didn't become one of my pillars, this is years ago, but I'm just kind of reflecting in terms of how I was, and without thinking about it, if nobody calls you out on it, or you don't call yourself out on it, how are you ever going to know that you were being a bad friend, or how you knowing that you weren't showing up for people? People make plans with you and you're just like, nah, forget it. And to me, it was just literally like a throwaway thing. Not today. So I didn't count how many pillars I've got. I didn't want to have it like, the 10 pillars of whatever it is. So
10 pillars of Dan Shaw.
Yeah.
It's kind of cringy, isn't it?
Exactly. So I'm going to just go through them first, and then I'll elaborate on them a bit more. So my first pillar is to be patient. My second is to be generous. Then it's to help others. Then it's to choose honesty and choose positivity, and to remain humble. And when I say be patient, I don't mean like when you're waiting for the bus and all that sort of stuff and just, chill out. I think it's important that not everything is a rush, and not everyone works or lives at the same pace as you. Everyone is their own person. And sometimes people struggle to explain things, stumble over words, and, I do too. It's just like, it was kind of just to take time and let these things happen. It's just an example of time to just reflect, like whenever you get a bad email or a text or something like that, because it's quite easy to just like respond to that and be, impulsively typing something up. When somebody sends you like a bad email or a bad text, I'm not saying it's often, but say for example you get a text where somebody just calls you out for something, and it's easy to just respond and say, shut up, or why have you texted me this? I can't think of any recent examples, but let's say that's one of the examples. And the core purpose of that pillar is to just let it sink in. Think about like what's happening. Don't just turn around and respond to someone or retaliate. I'm not a very aggressive person, but I just don't want to be that person that turns around and responds immediately. Like, no, you.
Yeah, the chimp paradox that we mentioned earlier, it goes into this in a bit of detail in terms of, letting your chimp brain react to things, because your chimp brain is way more powerful than your human brain. And I think actually you would, if you've not read it already, Dan, I think you would get a lot of value out of it, because it talks about exactly this. And if that's one of your pillars and you want to try and set yourself measurable goals to get you closer towards that, not saying that you're not close there at the moment, but we're always looking for ways to improve, aren't we?
Sure.
So I would recommend reading that, and any listener that wants to try and have more patience, I would recommend that book. It's called The Chimp Paradox. I can't remember who wrote it, but we'll put a link in the show notes. Yeah, it's just really good. Anyway, back to you.
No, it's just like, so for any decision, anything that happens in my life, is to just be patient. Like, even if it's at work and there's a new issue, don't just rush into it and be like, I can fix this. It's like, just take your time. I'm not saying be slow and, slow down on everything, but just take a bit of time to absorb and just kind of let things sink in for a bit, because, as I did mention, it's quite easy to just respond or retaliate. And it's nice to just actually take that time for yourself. Don't rush things. There is a time and a place for it, but that's kind of one of my core pillars, because I tend to, as it's been highlighted before, I tend to work at 150 miles an hour or 150% capacity, and then I end up burning out. And it's like, sometimes if I'd have just been a bit more patient or slowed down a bit, I would have got the same amount of work done, but with less stress. Again, I just keep reverting back to work. But my second pillar is to be generous. And this doesn't mean to go out and throw, pound notes at homeless people and film yourself doing it and all that sort of jargon, whatever
Pound
people
notes.
are doing.
You're Victorian.
I just see loads of stuff online where people are like, look at me, I'm doing something great, or they post on Facebook, just walk down the road and gave to someone. I'm talking about like with your immediate circle, your friends, your family. It doesn't have to be money. It could be time. It could be effort. It can be just helping someone out. Be generous, like reach out and ask people. If it kind of leads into my next pillar, which is to help others. But it's nice to just sometimes ask yourself, am I giving back?
Yeah.
Like at the end of the week, when you try, you're trying to define who you are as a person. If it gets to a Saturday and you think, well, am I being generous? Am I helping others? Even if it's just offering to buy a coffee for someone, or it's offering to just message someone, check up on them and see if they need any help with anything. But that's what I mean as well. Like it leads into help others, which doesn't mean like, oh, Joe's falling down the well, someone help him, and get your Superman cape on and do that sort of heroic action.
I am well known for falling down wells. So if I ever fell down a well, I would hope that you would help. And if that aligns with your pillar, then happy days.
Even better, exactly.
Even better.
It's like if your friends reach out because they're in trouble, just be there for them, which kind of leads into your values about being a better friend. That's how I've defined it, is like help others. And that's your, not helping strangers, it does kind of coincide with that, but that's why I've kept it very broad and very flexible. I want to be that person that helps others. So this helps me shape my decisions. If someone calls me and says, I need a favor, or even at work, if someone's like, can you pick this up for me? I look at my pillars and say, right, I'm being patient. I'm reading that. I'm arguably being generous as well by giving you my time. And I'm also aligning with that pillar, which is to help others at this point in my life. And also just, reach out and make sure you can be a helping hand, because that's who I want to be as a person. I want to be helpful. I don't want to be the person that everyone goes, oh, I would ask him a favor, but he'll probably kick off, or he's not that helpful. That's who I want to be. It's like, the example with fixing your fence.
Yeah.
That aligned directly with my pillars when you said you need help with your fence. It wasn't even a concern for me. I was just like, I'm there for my friends. I want to help others. And, that's why it kind of directly linked into who I wanted to be as a person. And you might think, oh, do you know what? It's just fixing a fence, it's helping a friend. Some people would just expect that from their friend, right? But it's just nice to know that, I'm actioning what who I want to be as a person.
You're practicing what you preach.
Yeah. I wasn't begrudgingly sitting there thinking, oh, Joe's asked me to fix his fence. Like, oh God. I just thought, this is who I want to be as a person. And if it happened again, if your fence fell down and you said, I need to swap another panel, I wouldn't be like, should have done it probably the first time. I'd just say, yep, I'm there.
And I think that, notwithstanding that it gave the opportunity for our other halves to have a coffee and a chinwag, which I'm sure they were very happy about, I couldn't have done that without your help at all. Like, just because, Kaylee and I tried to do it ourselves and it just wasn't working. And to your credit, when I text you going, could use a hand, I think you were over in like 20 minutes. So yeah, like, if that again, I'm happy to help you align your pillars,
Yeah.
If I'm falling down a well, if I've got broken fence panels, I'm basically making you the man that you are.
Correct.
The man that you want to be by just having all of these problems.
Yeah, we're going to have an issue and we're going to become arch nemesis, I reckon, at some point. I feel like that's the route we're going down. I'm hoping. I've always wanted one.
It's the story arc that makes sense, doesn't it? If you let a soap opera go long enough, the friends become enemies, and then they reconcile their differences and become friends again. So yeah,
let's give it time.
Give it time.
So I've got 3 more. I'm just going to whittle through them, and then I'm keen to listen to yours. So I've changed the wording of this slightly as of the other night, which is to choose honesty. Like if you're faced with a tough decision, my choice is to always to try and choose to be honest. Like even when it's a business-based decision, when it's an audio-based decision, just be honest with people. I'm honest with my friends, but I try and align that value across all of my social circles, and that's at work as well. I'm very open with my boss about stuff that's going on. Like I just think as well, like if you're charging someone for a service as well, like I do sometimes with the audio work, it's like telling them what they're paying for and why they're paying for it, instead of just saying, throwing them an invoice that's X amount of money and saying, hurry up and pay that. It's like you want to kind of be honest, and maybe the word to use would probably be transparency. I like full transparency, but it kind of aligns with being honest. I don't want to be known as, a liar in any aspect of my life. So I choose honesty in almost all situations. That's something I really strongly align with. And every time I'm faced with a decision, it's like, am I being honest?
Yeah.
And the answer should be yes. Otherwise, it's quite difficult to exist if you're just walking around in a web of lies kind of thing.
Absolutely.
I choose positivity. I know it's hard. We've had many conversations and you get into a very negative hole. Not you personally. I mean, I'm kind of talking about myself here.
You say you mean I.
Yeah, I do mean I. I get into this whole, zone of ruminating, and, I get into, a very negative place. And you just feel down in the dumps. And sometimes it's really hard to flick that mindset, back into a positive way. It's hard to turn it around. And I try and align my pillars with choosing positivity. So when I wake up and if I'm faced with a difficult decision, or I'm faced with, I can look at the workload ahead and go, this is bad. You can actually turn that around and say, well, actually, at the end of the day, some of this might have been completed and that's good.
Yeah.
Or I might have learned something from this. Like this might be a new technology that I've never dealt with, and it might be extremely stressful, but at the end of the day, I should hopefully know something about it, or
you'll learn something as a result. I think that's a really nice one. They're all nice, but that one in particular is nice, and it plays into the attitude of gratitude, which is something a friend of mine told me about, and it's looking at a difficult situation or a difficult decision, and then flipping it and being grateful for having to have the difficult decision or the difficult situation, because you're either going to learn something from it or you're going to expand as a person, because things that are worth doing are hard. They're never easy. Mm-hmm. And so being in a stressful, difficult situation is an opportunity for growth, and being positive about that, and doing all the gratitude practice and all of that good stuff has helped me, and has helped you as well, because I know it's something that you practice.
Yeah.
It helps you have a sunny disposition on tough things.
It's easier said than done though, isn't it?
For sure.
But that's why I always try and choose it. I'm not going to have a pillar that says be happy, do what I say, be happy. Joe, smile more, be happy. It doesn't bode well. Whereas if you're saying you want to choose positivity, it's when you're faced with a decision like that. Let's give a recent example. Let's say I'm mixing a song and I send it to you and say, Joe, what do you think? And you turn around and say, I don't like the guitar. I say, I could choose negativity and say, oh, all right, chill out. All right, what are you attacking the guitar for?
Yeah.
Or I could say, I'm looking at the positive. I've had a friend that's been honest and said he doesn't like the guitar. I can ask a follow-up question. I'm choosing to be positive in like that response. Say, what didn't you like? Oh, it was too tinny, whatever. And I just go, cool, I'll tone that down. Send it back to you and say, what do you think? You could be buzzing for it. You say, that's perfect. And then we're both happy. But that could easily turn into a very negative confrontation between two friends just saying, that guitar isn't too tinny. Yes, it is. No, it's not. And it's like just by a simple flick of the switch and choosing to learn something from it, because, nobody's out to just attack you like that.
I think it's about being a professional, isn't it?
Exactly.
When you're asking for feedback, don't just ask to be vindicated. ask for genuine feedback, because, you know, to your point, if you want people to act the way that you act and choose honesty, the wind doesn't blow both ways, right? So if you want to operate within a certain principle, you have to yearn and desire that others will operate within that principle as well, because you see value in you being that way yourself. So you should see value in others being that way too. You know, that's the perfect world.
Exactly, to my point, yeah. And that's what I'm saying is, if you live by those principles, by and large, the reflective behaviors that you see are the same. Because if you're honest with people, they have no reason to sit and lie to your face and stuff like that. If you're generous with people, that generosity can sometimes be passed on. It's like I messaged one of my friends about a desk, and we were just having a talk. He'd given me that desk, the desk that we were talking about. He was like, "I've got one, you can have it." Generous. So I bought him a bottle of drink and stuff, but I then passed on that generosity by giving it to someone else a couple of years later. And it's like, It just follows on. My last point is to be humble, and that just literally does what it says on the tin. Celebrate your wins, but don't brag. We do our win of the week, but it's not talking about, how good we are. It's just to bring that little bit of positivity and, try and be humble where you can.
Humility is an admirable quality, and it's one that everybody should practice. I think there's a balance between being self-deprecating and being humble, but also being arrogant and being overconfident. And so I think, humility is it's the word that kind of describes the balance. I think, someone's singing your praises and you go, hell yeah, I am the mother brother, right? That just it's not a good look. Whereas if you're gracious with praise, then I don't know. It's that if I say that was really good and they go, oh, yeah, I really appreciate that, thank you. I'm just doing my best. Thank you for and they're gracious in accepting the compliment. It just makes me respect them so much more. Versus if I go, oh, that was really good, and they go, yeah, I know. It's like, all right, mate.
Yeah.
Calm down. Yeah. So I think being humble is maybe something that I will incorporate into some of my values, because sometimes I'm so happy about the thing paying off and the work paying off that I'm just like, yeah, I'm the absolute best at everything ever.
But you're not alone in that, though. I know many, many people like that, and I have been like that, and I am still to this day sometimes like that. When we're mucking about, and we do it when we play PS4. We get a W, we win, and we're like, yes. We've done it. We're the kings of the world. Yeah, but exactly. I tend to just kind of rely on those principles and those pillars, and that's what I mean. I call them the pillars because they're fundamental. They're the foundations to my upkeep. And every time I'm faced with something I'm not sure of, or I have an interaction I'm unsure of, because you'll inevitably have arguments with people at some point, and you can always reflect and say, was I patient? Was I, again, sometimes being generous doesn't apply, but was I helping people? Was I being honest? And was I being positive? Because it's easy to just have an argument and ruminate about being negative. Was this argument caused by me being arrogant, or was it because I was was I aligning with the fact I wanted to be humble? Stuff like that. So the main pillar that I've lent on recently is to just be patient with people, give them a chance to speak, just give them a chance to input, because I think based on COVID and stuff like that, I think following on, there's got to be a period where you get to know your friends again and know what they've been doing, because it's easy for people to just go, yeah, I've been at home, I've just been chilling out, it's been boring. Well, actually delve into that. What did you learn about yourself for a year of isolation? Actually listen and actually communicate. It's
a very non-British thing to do, right? So, if you kind of, speak to a friend you've not spoken to for a while, say, oh, how's the last year been? And they go, yeah, fine. Just been chilling out, not doing much. And you go, what did you learn about yourself? Yeah. It's a little bit of like a, what?
Yeah.
Like, get back in your box, mate. But,
going to work on my phrasing.
Yeah. But I think it is important, right, to try and have more of those meaningful conversations with people, especially, this is not to sort of draw a line between the two, boys and girls, men and women kind of thing. But I think men do struggle with having those meaningful conversations more than maybe women do. And I think that's been, widely kind of reported that that people struggle to really kind of connect. Men speaking to men struggle to have those kind of feelings conversations. But I think actually that's getting better, and the perception of talking about your feelings is no longer seen as a negative thing, which is good.
Again, aligns with the pillars and values in terms of helping others. If you actually pay attention to your friends, you can probably see that some of them might be struggling, and actually just try and connect with them a bit more.
Absolutely. And I'll give you an example of that. I have a friend that I've known for many, many, many years, and I found out literally only just recently that he's had some challenges, and he's had to take some medication for those challenges. And actually I was like, I had no idea that was even a thing for him. Actually maybe that was one of the reasons why I wanted to think about being a better friend, because I considered this person years ago to be one of my best friends, and actually you should know things like that about your friends. And for someone who he's not necessarily a guarded person, and so maybe I just wasn't paying enough attention, rather than it being, oh, why didn't you tell me? It's like, well, why didn't I ask?
Exactly. And that's the thing, you have your own pillars and your own values, which allow you to kind of assess that and say, right, I should have, instead of putting that on your friend, you've kind of owned up to that, said, right, it was down to me, and what can I learn from that, and how do I move forwards in terms of being a better friend, which is great.
Yeah, exactly. So I chose not to go into loads of detail about my values, because some of them are personal, and some of them are kind of just for me. So what I thought I'd do in response to you being comfortable with sharing them is I would just kind of talk through my process of how I decide what a value is going to be, and how I refine them, and how I kind of reevaluate them over time. So I've talked about my annual review in previous episodes, so I'm not going to go into loads of detail about that. But part of my annual review, I do a top to bottom review of kind of where I'm at with my life, essentially. And a big part of that is thinking about my identity. And I'm not going to get deep on you here, but essentially what I'm looking at is, okay, where do I feel like I am now versus who my ideal self is? Where do I feel like I could be better if I had the opportunity to do that? And so ultimately the outcome of that review is values that I create, net new values that I want to try and strive and
every year,
be more like. Yeah, every year. Yeah. It may be that actually it's just refinements to my existing values, or it may be just completely new ones. And believe it or not, I have a Notion database where I keep those.
No.
Yeah, I know, right? It's funny that.
I nearly fell off my chair.
I know. So this is not an old thing, but it's not a new thing as well. So it's kind of it's midterm. It's I'm in my second year of doing this now, essentially. And that Notion database is where I've captured those qualities that I want to possess. And the actual entry is, it'll be, I've put an example in the show notes of, be a top performing salesperson, right? And in that entry, I have outlined what those qualities are in detail, and perhaps where my gaps are in possessing the ideal state of that quality. So, this is me essentially setting the bar of what this value means to me. And so, in my being a top performing salesperson, there's two sections. There's what does this look like? So, I've basically bullet pointed what that looks like, and where I feel like my gaps are kind of just below. And so I can then kind of go, okay, well, that's where I feel like the value is. That's where I feel like my gaps are. Now I can set myself meaningful goals to help close those gaps. That's kind of what I'm really striving towards. That's what I do at the monthly review cycle. So as part of my monthly review, I kind of reassess where I'm at against those values. I look at, okay, have I completed some of these goals that I set myself last month? Have I made meaningful enough progress on those goals to have assimilated a particular value as part of my identity, for example? That's kind of what I'm looking for as part of that monthly review process of, where am I at, essentially? And at that point, I do review the values as well. And, I take some time to think about whether they're still aligned to how I'm feeling. And so, there have been some values that I've archived, and some values that I've kind of tweaked in terms of their attributes. And so, I'll kind of do a screenshot for the listeners to look at in the show notes. But essentially, that's a copy of my Notion entry.
What I do really like is where you're highlighting where you feel your gaps are. So you're, ironing out what you've had issues with and how you can improve on them.
Yeah, I mean, in that example, I've captured all the things that I think makes a top performing salesperson, which is what I want to be naturally. And then whenever I set myself a goal that's related to being a top performing salesperson, I'll evaluate the goal against the principles in that value. And if it all aligns, then the goal makes sense. And, I make the goal active, so to speak, right? And then if not, then I refine it or I trash it, right? It's really simple. Every time I want to say, right, that is a goal that I want to set myself, I basically qualify that goal against, okay, well, does that align with who I'm striving to be? And the goals are, guess what? Another database in Notion. But the nice thing is actually they have a relational link between the two.
Backlinks back, all right?
Well, there's a relation database. So basically there's an entry in the database that I can, in the goals that I can put a value, and in the value that I can put the goals in. So basically I can see in line whether the goals have a value assigned. And if they don't, then I need to look at them and evaluate, okay, well, what value does this align to? And if it doesn't align to any of my values, then why do I have it as a goal? Does that mean that I need to reevaluate my values because this is a goal that I've intrinsically kind of thought I want to do this, but it doesn't actually align with anything that I'm trying to achieve, like bigger picture stuff. But it also allows me to see that if a value doesn't have a goal assigned, then I know that I'm not doing anything to make meaningful progress towards being the ideal version of myself in that area. So it gives me a real easy look at, okay, how am I tracking against being the best version of me? And look, the reason why I've decided that this is the way I want to operate is ultimately the modern world has us with lots of fingers in different pies. There isn't just kind of a singular thing that we are responsible for. We have to wear multiple hats, or we have to be multiple roles as part of being a human. Both professional roles and personal roles as well. And for those of us who are always looking at reviewing and refining, of which I'm a big proponent of, and I'm sure there are other people out there who are like that too, but I'm conscious equally that that's not everybody. I think having some sort of value or pillar system is really important to help me and to help those people stay true to themselves, not just your chimp self, but your human self, the person that you kind of have evaluated as the person that you want to be, rather than what your chimp brain makes you be. So for me, that's why I kind of do that review process. I kind of evaluate that, and that's why I'm always constantly refining it. So I don't just set my values and go, oh, that's the kind of person I want to be, and that's the person I'm just going to go towards, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. I actually feel like I should probably reevaluate maybe every month and see that I have my pillars, and I do actually lean on them quite a lot, and I rely on them, but I feel like I could maybe monthly look back and say, well, based on a lot of the interactions I've had, have I acted out based on these pillars or not? It was interesting that you touched on like having, different professional and, personal lives and having different hats to wear, because it kind of just made me think that the producer Dan is a very different person to worker Dan versus... the personal Dan kind of is spread thinly across all of it. That's the thing for me, having those values and those pillars is like something that can be consistent across all of them, no matter what hat I'm wearing, which is why it's so important to have them. And it's easy, like, you've mentioned the chimp brain. It is easy to just exist and just kind of coast through life and just do the things you do because you wake up and you go to work and you finish work. And that's kind of just the same thing you've always done. But when you define some, sort of principles like this, it gives you I don't know, maybe I sound a bit pretentious, but it does give you like a profound meaning to what you're doing, which you otherwise wouldn't have. You don't know where you want to go. And I suppose it's more difficult at a younger age because you really don't know. But if you just take 5 minutes to write down who you want to be, it's like a good guiding point and a good start to where you want to go.
If you can do that in 5 minutes, then good golly. It took me a long time Because it's a really hard question, because it's a question you never ask yourself, right? You just are who you are, right? But is that who you want to be? And that's the bit that is so difficult. This is a kind of an ever evolving process for me, and I think that, you know, for a lot of people, they'll kind of look at this and go, God, this is actually quite challenging to sit down and decide, okay, this is my kind of operating principle. This is kind of, you know, and actually capture that and say, right, I want to make every decision and do every action aligning to, you know, these 7 or 10 or 5 or 25 things. I would recommend keeping them as low as possible, right? Because if you're trying to make a decision and then evaluating 25 different things, it's like you'll never ever make a decision, or you'll never do any actions.
Exactly.
So I don't know, it's a balance, and I think that this is the bit that is so important, in my opinion, right? Getting your reason for being nailed down trickles down to everything else that you do, you know, because as I said earlier, if you're just setting yourself arbitrary goals based on, you know, the social constructs of our world, or based on what your friends say that you should be doing, or what society says you should be doing, then you may not be aligning your actions with what makes you truly tick. And you may not even know what makes you truly tick. It took me a long time to really understand, like, you know, what I was after from life.
Yeah.
And I think that this is for me how I decide, okay, this is what I want from life.
Well, that's what this year's been so good at. Yeah, again, choosing positivity. This year has been so good for just taking that time, because you've had the extra time to just sit there and decide what you want to do. And
well, for you, it's, yeah. For a lot of people, maybe not, but yeah, you're saying.
For me, me specifically, it's been a lot of time to reflect inwardly, and a lot of time to define who I want to be.
So I've said all I want to say about my values. I don't know about you, Dan, if you've got anything that you wanted to add.
No, I am actually going to drop off this at some point, and I'm going to reevaluate. This conversation has really made me think. Mine are vague enough that I can live by them, but I feel like there's probably more I could be doing, and I want to have a sit down and think about that and decide what, you know, decide maybe in a bit more detail who I want to be. There's a lot to consider.
That's profound, mate.
But this is fairly new for me, though. This is fairly new for me. I haven't ever done any inward reflection or any sort of self-improvement, if I'm honest. I've had a haircut every now and then, but, you know, haven't done any real soul searching, and this is all new for me. I'm enjoying the journey, but I just kind of need to tune it.
Yeah, it's iterative for sure, because life is iterative. You're never the finished article. If you think you are, you're wrong. Making tweaks to yourself and like your principles is important, because we are different people to the people that we were 10 years ago. Right? What I mean by that is the person that I am today, Joe Page 2021, is not the person Joe Page 2011. Those two are different people, right? One doesn't exist anymore and one is currently existing, right? So I've always been the person that I am today, right now, because I'm not the person that I was 10 years ago. I have the experiences of the person that I was 10 years ago, but I'm not that guy. And you're not that guy from 10 years ago either. You know, that just isn't you, right? Continually refining makes sure that, you know, the person that I'm striving to be is actually me and not the person from 10 years ago.
You want to have that trajectory where you know what the goal is, where the end goal is.
Well, Dan, I've enjoyed our conversation this morning. The Thursday conversation, the weekday conversation.
It is very odd, but yeah, it's been nice.
Slightly strange.
It's been very relaxed. We're not limited by the time constraints. I normally have to go and walk the dog after this, but it's already been done.
There you go. Happy days. Thanks everybody for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing to our show. And if you really, really liked it, please consider giving us a 5-star rating. You know, that really helps us out. It helps us grow our audience. So, you know, only if you loved it, but if you did, then that'd be really good. If you'd like to hear more from Dan or myself, please follow us on Twitter at ThriveGuysPod. Otherwise, we'll see you next week. Say goodbye, Dan.
Goodbye.